15 months ago, Victoria was celebrating a sporting success.
The 2026 Commonwealth Games has been awarded to Victoria. Well done.
Today came an embarrassing back down.
The Games will not proceed in Victoria in 2026.
Is it a comprehensive letdown for the athletes, the excited host communities?
Jake Benstead, who won bronze in judo in Birmingham last year, is among those devastated by the decision.
It's really hard for us athletes. We put everything into these kind of things, and for it to be taken away, it really does hurt.
Some of Australia's sporting greats have also spoken out.
I'm sure it's going to be a really disappointing decision for a lot of up-and-coming athletes.
From a sports perspective, I find it quite sad.
Staging the Games has been a struggle from the outset. There was no host after several original bidders pulled out, citing the huge costs. Victoria stepped in with its ambitious plan to host the event across 4 regional cities.
It'll cost a substantial amount, but I don't see it as a cost. I see it as a profound investment.
But the Premier says the cost has now ballooned to more than double the original $2.6 billion price tag.
Frankly, $6 to $7 billion for a 12-day sporting event, we are not doing that.
Stated cost overruns, in our opinion, are a gross exaggeration.
The 2018 Gold Coast Games cost $1.2 billion, and last year's event in Birmingham totalled $1.8 billion. Commonwealth Games Australia says the Victorian government ignored recommendations to move events to purpose-built stadiums in Melbourne to bring down costs.
This is a terrible decision for Australia.
That's a decision made by the Victorian government.
The opening ceremony was meant to be held here at the MCG in less than 1,000 days. Now it's not clear where or if it'll even be held. Every other state has ruled out taking on the Games, and the organising committee's conceded it'll be a challenge to find a new host.
When Alessia McCaig heard the 2026 Commonwealth Games were coming to town, she lobbied for her sport to be held locally.
I mean, I don't think it was all my letter that made it happen, but yeah, it was definitely a little push.
With the Games now nixed, she fears Bendigo's rundown facilities are here to stay.
It would have been really good to have an indoor velodrome in more of a central area in Victoria.
The state government says planned upgrades to regional sporting facilities will still go ahead, but that's cold comfort to the clubs keen to host the world's best.
It meant so much for us, particularly as one of Australia's best bowlers, Aaron Wilson, was a member of this club, and we were so looking forward to having not only Aaron, but all the best bowlers in the world come here.
The Games were initially seen as an opportunity to help regional communities bounce back after the pandemic, floods and cost of living pressures.
Daniel Andrews and Jacinta Allen have humiliated Victorians. They've betrayed regional Victoria.
Now, with the injection of tourism dollars running away, it's a disappointment to some.
Disappointment in terms of our ability to showcase our community and the other regional communities to a global audience.
It's a very uneasy time for many in our industry.
The need for athlete accommodation was seen as an opportunity to build cheap social housing in regional Victoria. The state government has vowed to honour that $1 billion commitment, but advocates say housing is needed now.
I've been here 15 years and this is the highest amount of homeless people I'm seeing presenting through our doors at the moment.
But for the athletes, it's the competition they'll miss.
A bit of like a pride moment, obviously, and yeah, to have all of my friends and family around to support me and watch me in the crowd.
Victoria took on the Commonwealth Games almost as palliative care. So has this decision sounded their death knell? Nobody else wanted these games, and the previous event got flicked to Birmingham after Durban dropped out because of the costs. What happens now that one of the Games' biggest cheerleaders kicks it to the curb? Australia has hosted more games and is more successful at the Games than any other nation. So as existential body blows go, this is a doozy. Mega sporting events are increasingly expensive, hard to justify. But on top of that, the relevance of the Commonwealth Games has always been tied to the relevance of the Commonwealth itself. And in the wake of the death of the Queen and some countries questioning their membership, there's never been a more challenging time to fight for games based on the centuries-old institution. The Games have occupied a unique space in our sporting landscape. Vital prep for the Olympics, a chance for rising stars to stake their claim and veterans to stage a farewell on a major stage. And they've been the Olympics for beloved sports like netball and squash and lawn bowls. But who can afford to carry on the tradition?
Well, joining me now for his analysis of the day's developments is our state political reporter, Richard Willingham. Rich, the initial estimate was $2.6 billion. How could it have been so incredibly underestimated?
Well, Tam, I think that's the $4 billion question. How do we go 15 months ago from $2.6 billion to more than $6 billion in the last couple of weeks? It really goes to the government's credibility and their competency in doing their homework, their basics. They say that they worked with Ernst & Young on this, and now they've come back and said these figures are so much bigger. Now, I think it's fair for Victorians to ask what other projects might be suffering the same fate. We've got so many projects worth billions of dollars out there. So the government's going to continue to face the heat over this. It's going to continue to be attacked as an embarrassment, and we still don't actually know how much the government is going to pay, how much taxpayers are going to pay for actually breaking this contract.
When the Premier spoke to the media today, he said that he's had to make a whole heap of tough decisions in his time, but that this was not one of them. Yet a turnaround of this magnitude is a big deal, isn't it?
It is, and I think today we saw the Premier at his classic best in terms of delivering bad news. I think there's several elements to this. One is that this Games did have the potential to be problematic, trying to deliver all these projects in a short period of time with an immovable deadline. But I think the real key is the state of Victoria's budget. We're in a parlous position. Debt's going to ratchet up to $171 billion in 3 years' time, so they couldn't afford to spend any more, and this has enabled them to get out of this. They're still spending $2 billion on some projects, but they've got longer to do it. But the question about these figures are going to continue. The Commonwealth Games themselves said they don't believe these figures. For example, Melbourne could have hosted these games. The Premier said that's going to cost $4 billion. But we held the games in 2006. The stadiums already exist. And just last year, Birmingham held the games and it only cost them $1.8 billion. So something doesn't add up and those questions will continue. And that's going to be a big political problem.
Richard Willingham, thank you.